People will go somewhere where they consider to be holy ground, and they'll put a lot of energy into it. I mean, the hunger for pilgrimage is an impulse that all humans have in some way or another. Holly already mentioned the Hajj, and this last couple of weeks it's got a lot of attention in the news. Walking in the Saudi Arabian desert is already going to be quite a challenge, but because of climate change, right, the temperatures got to 122 degrees, and I think 1,300 people lost their life during that 5 days of walking. But it was also the Hajj that contributed to Malcolm X's second conversion, right? I mean, initially, he was convinced that the only way to address violence of Christian white supremacy was with violence. Defend ourselves, right? But then he gets on a plane, and he goes to Mecca, and when he gets off the plane, he sees people that he never imagined would be Muslim. White and black and brown and all kinds of shades from all different kinds of countries. And so he pens this letter from Mecca, and he says, on this pilgrimage I have seen, what I have seen and experienced has forced me to rearrange my thinking. I no longer subscribe to sweeping indictments of any race. I am now striving to live the life of a true Sunni Muslim. I can state in all sincerity that I wish nothing but freedom, justice, and equality, life, liberty, and the pursuit of happiness for all people. Wow, what a transformation, if you know his story. And many who have taken such journeys come back changed, right? We can understand this impulse, this desire to put on some walking shoes. Well, as Holly's already said, Jody and I are ending our time at Cherith Brook, and we invite you to the party. It's actually not just about us leaving, it's about finishing this great storefront project that so many people have contributed to. It's about handing off the baton to amazing people. It's about continuing a good work, really, and we're excited to be a part of that. And so I get the privilege afterwards, Jody and I get some time, and I'm going on the Camino. And if you don't know about it, you get to traverse from the east to the west side of Spain. And I get to start off in the base of the Pyrenees Mountains. So the first day I think is going to be the hardest walking, because you have to scale over the mountains, or not scale, but walk. And then it continues through fields, wine country, wheat fields, villages, wooded trails, urban centers, and finally after some 40 days or whatever it takes, you get to arrive in Santiago, Spain. And I've been reading some memoirs, and authors say things like, I've been dreaming about this my whole life. Or, I've been training and planning for the last 2 years to get to take this trip. Well, honestly, I really had no aspiration of taking this trip. I was introduced to it a few years ago by a friend who wrote this beautiful story about his own pilgrimage, and then, of course, some of us have seen the movie The Way, right? With Emilio Estevez and Martin Sheen, and I love that flick. But in fact, there are good reasons not to take the Camino. Let me be honest. The destination is this cathedral that claims to house the bones of St. James, the brother of Jesus. And it honors St. James as Matamoros, which is the Moor slayer, the slayer of Muslims, right? So there was apparently this battle in the 8th century, and the Christians were fighting the Muslims, and supposedly James miraculously, this 1st century figure, miraculously appears in the 9th century to help the Christians defeat the Moors. So, you know, it's a history that glorifies violence. And that's a contradiction. It's also unclear how many people walk the Camino for spiritual renewal, or it's become kind of a popular tourist thing. And my friends on the street say, why would you fly all the way to Paris or to Spain to walk that far when every day you can walk with us 5 to 10 miles to get food, shelter, a shower, and then start over the next day? It's a privilege for sure. But there's this wonderful little book I recommend by Jim Forrest. It's not on the Camino, but it's on pilgrimage in life. And he says, no matter how short the distances and how familiar the route you travel on any day, you can do it as a pilgrim. And no matter how long the journey or how sacred its destination, it is possible to be nothing more than a tourist. But there are lots of personal reasons why people do these kinds of things, right? Personal healing, soul searching. We need to surrender something in our life. and we don't have the capacity to do it on our own. There's a darkness or a wounded self that we're carrying around. Maybe we just need to let something go. And the best reason I can give at this point, as I've been thinking about this, and I appreciate you letting me speak about this, is I need to walk some stuff off. I need help. I need space to let go of Cherith Brook. Other people need me to need space to walk Cherith Brook off. Need to walk off some of Eric's false self that over years of ministry we start to develop in our life, right? I mean, after a time of a public work, sometimes there's an identity that's created around who you are, who you think you are, who people think that you are. And it often gets in the way of listening to God in our lives. So I'm really humbled and really grateful to have the resources to take the journey. And Hebrews is so beautiful for this. It reminds us that there are lots of ways, lots of reasons to pursue pilgrimage. There are voices throughout Scripture that are deeply committed to holding our place in life loosely. How do we hold our place in life loosely? How do we nurture a community without getting too comfortable with who we think we are? This text offers us a wonderful image of church as a long walk through history. To be church, you just got to do two things. You got to have faith and you got to go. You got to have faith and you got to do. That's it. The story begins with God who does something, who creates this beautiful space that we live in, the universe. And then by faith, Abel offered. And by faith, Noah built. And by faith, Abraham went. And by faith, Sarah bore a child. It's this church history based on faith as action, faith as an assurance, faith as movement, faith as a history that pulls the chair out from underneath our sedentary impulses. For this author, faith and hope are almost like synonymous. Faith is having the assurance of something that we can't see, we will maybe never see. Hope is having the evidence that we need to keep going, to keep moving in the right direction. Faith and hope sweep us up in God's gravitational pull. And Jesus is just one incarnation of this. He didn't take the journey alone. He didn't walk it by himself. He stands on the shoulders of the great cloud of witnesses. Story after story, one sojourner after the next. And each episode, each chapter in that story contributes something to the one big story. Each generation is given some kind of vision for what a better world can look like. Sometimes we have to amend it, sometimes we have to qualify it. We always have to struggle for it. The world needs repairing. And until it's made right, until everyone feels at home, none of us should feel entirely at home. Until everybody feels belonging, we shouldn't get too comfortable. So we need to learn to become a pilgrim people. And I think that taking the chance to prepare for this Camino, this trip, is helping me to think about that again. So all the literature tells you when you're going to take something like this, you take 10% of your body weight. So for me, somewhere between 20 and 30 pounds, right? It's not a lot, especially when you see folks at the bus stop who are dragging their suitcases and carrying a book bag on their back. It's not a lot until you think about maybe 40 days and 500 miles, and then you're out of shape, and then you wonder and you worry. And I'm finding that as I pack, the weight continues to add on, right, quickly. It doesn't take much. I'm like, wow, how am I going to do this? And apparently on the trail, bragging rights go to the people who have the smallest and lightest packs. So one writer, though, has made a very interesting observation. People pack their fears. People pack their fears. So whatever you're scared of is what you're going to overpack. If you're worried about being hungry, then you're going to have way too much food, especially when you can buy it along the way. If you're scared of bugs, you're probably going to pack lots of bug spray when you probably don't need it. If you're worried about being cold, you're going to have too many layers of clothes. In essence, it's our fears that weigh us down. So if we dig through our own life luggage, what do we find? What do you find? We recognize how our fears have become burdens. How long have we been lugging around this worry or this anxiety? And when we get tired of that, when we agonize, then we still agonize about what to do with it, right? We don't really want to get rid of it. We know it's there. How do we relieve ourselves with this burden, we think, without quite letting go of it? So we strategize all kinds of ways that we can address this fear in our life. You know what they're doing now on the Camino is you can hire someone to drive your pack to the next town. Right? Others just adapt to the pain. I mean, they don't get rid of things. They just get more and more slowed down, more and more hunched over. And this kind of becomes their new normal, right? Well, pilgrimage invites us to face these fears. It invites surrender. And the hardest solution is sometimes just the simplest and most obvious thing. Discard it. Toss it on the side of the road. Or ask for help. Learn how to be a guest. The best Camino stories I've heard are people who need something and they realize I have to go to someone else to help me. I didn't bring it. Or I got rid of it early, or whatever the case may be. And it becomes this experience of learning to give and receive from people in your same situation. So can we reframe our concerns and anxiety? Can that be resurrected into dependency? Trust that we will find what we need in each other. So I have read a couple of these memoirs, and there are lots of them. Every author seems to have a section where they reflect on companions who didn't make it, or how they almost didn't get there, right? Pilgrims get tendinitis. They get bloody blister on top of bloody blister. They have to stop and heal. And sometimes they have these tight itineraries and they just can't quite pull it off. Or maybe they sprain an ankle, break a leg, and that's it. So as I was reading these, I actually started getting worried, like, it's only a few months away, right? I've got so much to do. I'm stressed right now. Do I really have the time to prepare for this? Is this such a good idea? Maybe I'll just tell people I'm thinking about going, you know. And what if I don't make it? I'm going to be embarrassed, right? I mean, what do I tell people? There aren't any Camino memoirs written by people who didn't make it. Let me tell you that. So my ego is invested in getting to the destination. This planning has already reminded me how much I get wrapped up in success. Well, a curious thing about the cloud of witnesses, Isaac and Rebekah, Moses and Miriam, the people of Israel on their exodus, Rahab the prostitute, Jesus. They lived by faith, but oh yeah, they didn't get there. They didn't make it all the way to the promise they had been given. They didn't receive the things promised them. They died without getting where they were going, we're told. Repeated several times in this chapter. They only saw it from a distance. Reminds me of another 20th century figure. I've seen the promised land. I may not get there with you, but I want you to know tonight that we as a people will get to the promised land. So I'm happy. Tonight I'm not worried about anything. Mine eyes have seen the glory of the coming of the Lord. You know those words, right? Yeah. Another saint that didn't arrive. Did he fail? No. So when the Buddha was asked, what do you and your disciples practice? He said, we sit, we walk, and we eat. And the questioner said, but sir, everyone does that. Everyone sits and walks and eats. The Buddha told him, well, when we sit, we know we're sitting. When we walk, we know we're walking. When we eat, we know we're eating. Hebrews says, there is truth in that critique, that the journey is the destination. Transformation happens in the struggle. Liberation happens amidst our fight and the walk of daily life. And the mark of the true church, according to this particular book, is not right doctrine. It's not good biblical interpretation. it's not being baptized into the right group. Abraham and Sarah didn't know where they were going. Didn't know. But they set out anyway. And they got there a couple times and didn't know they were there. We often don't know how it's going to unfold. Yet every day that we keep walking toward that promise, we touch some sliver of our destination. Every day that we keep walking toward our promise, we get to touch, to taste, to feel, to see a sliver of that destination. Because all the way to heaven is heaven. Amen.